Is that on? Can you hear me? Okay. As usual, you have to eat it in order to be heard, huh? Okay. That's good to know. It's good to see you all here this evening for our missions evening that is traditionally sponsored by USFW and Quaker Men. For those of you who don't know, I'm Lynn Mills. I'm from West Newton Meeting. I'm also the co-president of the Midwest region of USFW, which is the group that was originally Western and Indiana and Indiana USFW and Western yearly meeting. Up here with me are John Hesselman and Paul Trober. They are representing Quaker Men. Our offering, which we will be taking after a while, will be going to Belize. And so if you're going to write a check, we're going to give you a little time to do that. You can make it out to MR Midwest Region USFW. And we will take care of it and make sure it gets to Belize. I have one announcement. We wouldn't be Quaker meeting if we didn't have at least one announcement, right? In your schedule for tomorrow at 10 o'clock, apparently the description is a little bit misleading as to what's going on at the 10 o'clock workshop time. The proper title for it is Spiritual Inheritance and Spiritual Legacy. So it's kind of a continuation of some of our discussions about our history and our legacy and where we might want to go from here. Let's begin by joining together and singing hymn on page 13. You want to play, Peggy or Leah? We need a piano player, one of the two of you. You can flip a coin. Page 13, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. And I think this is one of those hymns that you really can't sing sitting down. And especially since we all had a kind of a heavy meal right beforehand, let's stand up and be joyful. Tom and Clark and Diana, if you would come forward. Tom's going to pray for our offering. Clark and Diana will be collecting it.
Join me in the spirit of prayer. God, we thank you for the abundance that you've brought us, and we ask that you help us to remember that abundance, that you help us to see everything that we have, and help us to share it with all those who have need of it. Help us to be graceful, help us to be loving, help us to be kind. Help us to know our gifts, to recognize the gifts in others, and to help those gifts to flourish. Use us to further your works, Lord. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Okay, I would like to just welcome Kelly Kellum, the General Secretary of FUM. I'm sure he's a familiar face, and we all welcome him as he comes forward and shares some of the work that FUM is doing in our behalf.
John, thanks for introducing me, because I'm just here to introduce Oscar and Miriam. But people often wonder and ask this question: what is Friends United meeting? And sometimes I mention our mission statement, and but the phrase that I sometimes use is that we are not Friends United meeting is a missional community. And by that, I mean that we indeed are called to be engaged in the life and work of God in the world. But we do it in a sense of community. And we aren't just a mission-sending agency, but we are a global community of people who are committed to doing God's work in the world together. And I think that Oscar and Miriam and Michael is a great reflection of that. Oscar is a graduate of Friends Theological College in Kaimosi, Kenya. At the time, he had a copy of Quaker Life at Kaimosi and heard about work in Belize and felt God was calling him to be a missionary. But the narrative that he either believed or was taught, I'm not sure, is Africans don't become missionaries. Is that similar? And yet, Oscar went on with his life. He started working on his PhD in Thailand when FUM announced the church planting and looking for a church planting pastor, and a call arose again. I think God's calling us to be a missionary. And that time he had the courage to apply and realize that FUM is a missional community that welcomes all into the ministry of God. So Oscar, for me, is the embodiment of that missional community in many ways. Not to mention the fact that he's now married to Miriam, and she was a missionary in Vietnam, and they courted over the internet until finally they met up and were married in Belize. So what a joy it is to have them as part of our missional community. Michael is the coordinator for North American and Caribbean Ministries on behalf of Friends United Meeting. And he was a board member for Friends United Meeting for a long time, a pastor, and I think God is discovering new ways in which he's being called to be part of this missional community. It is my joy to work with some amazing people. And Michael and Miriam and Oscar are just a few of the folks that I get the joy to connect with. And tonight they are going to tell a little bit about their lives and their work. And in doing so, I hope you learn a little bit about Friends United Meeting. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them, and or me, and we'll be happy to provide you with whatever direction or answers that might be helpful to you. So, and I don't even know who is coming up first, and I don't know the order of the program, other than John is to introduce me, and I'm to introduce them. So welcome.
Oscar said that either Miriam or Noah was done for the day. He wouldn't say who, but you'll probably not see Miriam. That I think Noah had enough of Oscar or me. I don't remember which, and so they have gone. When I checked in this morning, there was an option to get a first-timer tag for Western Yearly Meeting. And I think I've been to Western Yearly Meeting sessions before. I shared earlier that I broke my arm at the first time I came to Western Yearly Meeting. I don't remember where we were at, but the youth were not here. We were somewhere sequestered, what feels like that way. And I don't know where that was. Not even in Plainfield, and having our own thing. And I was playing football and fell funny and cracked a bone in my elbow. And then when they brought us back together, I told my mother that it hurt, and we went to the emergency care center somewhere here in Plainfield. And at that time, I was not quite this big, but maybe this tall, and my mother is still 5'5", and he looked at her and asked me and her whether there was some abuse going on, and it felt like something they had to do, but it just felt really weird. Western Yearly Meeting has been a part of my Indiana home since we moved to Indiana in 1987. I was telling somebody today that I probably spent half of my teenage years at Lynn's house. They probably gave me several $1,000s to destroy their farm equipment and various sundry things that a teenage boy would do on a farm. It somewhat feels like home. After the time in Western Yearly Meeting, I went to college, got married, and started working at Quaker Haven, where I met my wife, and we started a family, and about 4 years into that, I was asked not to work at Quaker Haven anymore, and very politely. Dale Graves was the president of the board that day when I was fired from Quaker Haven, and I had preached the last 7 Sundays at the church at camp, and he and Sylvia were there for some project they were doing over Christmas break, which was their tradition. And on the Monday after I preached, he said, and we'd gone through the plaque that I was getting fired, and he said, "You know, yesterday was the best sermon I've heard in a while. Have you thought about going into pastoral ministry?" One of the fun things on my termination letter was, has poor communication skills and a bad temper. And when Dale said, "Have you thought about pastoral ministry?" I thought, that's exactly what the ministry needs: poor communication skills and a bad temper. And so I signed myself up. By the end of that winter, I was the pastor at Raysville Friends Church in Indiana Yearly Meeting. And spent 11 years there, and went to seminary. I'm a ESR graduate in that, a little less than that 11 years. It took me about 9 to make it through. I started in '04, and then my wife found money to go to school, and so I quit going to school for a while, and then when she graduated, I went back full-time. And I was going to seminary when Indiana Yearly Meeting split, and I had the classes lined up and the time to think to put together an identity for a group of churches that were asked to no longer be worshiping with Indiana Yearly Meeting. Somebody asked me today, "How's that going?" and in some ways it's going fine. In some ways I don't think it's going fine. That group of churches has figured out what they don't want to be, but they haven't figured out what they want to be for. They don't want to be in a place where they are hurt and wounded in the same way they were 10 years ago. But they haven't figured out how to do that productively with vulnerability and intention and care. I've spent the previous 8 years as the pastor at Muncie Friends Church in Muncie, Indiana, as part of that as the clerk of the new association. And last year was the hardest year of my ministerial life. I don't know if you've had conversations with your pastors about what they experienced during COVID. For me, we were asked to do all of the things that are done without human connection, and to not have the human connection that drives, for me, my heart, my soul. I was preparing taped sermons without an audience. I remember coming into church on Easter Sunday in 2020, and there was nobody in the pews. And I took a video and talked about the people in an ark, where they would be sitting, and the fact that they weren't there. And it for me was really poignant on Easter Sunday to have that conversation. And it went that way for pastors for a couple of years. Do these things that are disconnected from your humanity and not be able to reap the rewards of human connection in the way that find it meaningful. And so my situation, what made it difficult was when we came back together, there was a lot of regret, there was a lot of frustration, there was a lot of reality. I don't know if you have seen or heard that we have put our building up for sale because we are at a point where it became untenable for the group gathered to try to maintain a facility that we couldn't use we couldn't do a reasonable facsimile of a useful thing in that building because it was so big and we were so small and we were behind in so many things that every time we gathered, instead of experiencing the presence of God, we experienced the leak of the roof or the fact that the drains weren't working, or all of these list of things that kept us from engaging in the presence of God. And it became a continuation of what it meant to be in ministry with COVID. We weren't connecting on things that were important because we were so busy arguing about what parts of the building we could fix and what we couldn't, and what was important and what wasn't important. And we couldn't see each other in the way that we needed to see each other. In 2014, 2015 was about the time that Dale was spending a lot of time in Belize, and he was looking around and asking questions, and the general board was asking questions, and it was about the time that I started on the FUM general board. And we began having these conversations about what were we going to do in Belize and what was going to happen. And there was a proposal at the spring board meeting. Let's buy this building. And I remember the cost of the building and thinking that was a lot of money, and it was a lot of money. And the board sat in that room and deliberated and said, we will do this if there is a church on site. And it felt a little like a challenge that was going to be answered with defeat. When we gathered again as a board that fall, Dale came and said, about a week after we had that board meeting, somebody gave me a phone call and said, can I have a Quaker worship meeting? And he said yes. And I think that's part of the story Kelly was remembering today. That every challenge the general board laid down for what was going on in Belize, God said, I'm already working ahead. I've got that figured out. Not very long after Oscar applied, FUM filled that job, that responsibility. And we filled it with someone who's gifted in community development. Someone who is gifted in human connection, making relationships work on the ground. The board visited Belize in March of 2019, and we looked at what was going on in Belize, and we wondered if we were doing the right thing. And there were questions asked, not in front of Oscar, and I don't know that Oscar knows about this at this point. It'll be a surprise. Is Oscar the right person for this job? And we asked those questions, and within the next year, the ministry that Oscar is gifted at translated into a reality of a church that was a group of teenage boys who were gathering together to worship and working out leadership responsibilities, and Oscar was standing behind them as their guide, their director, their helper, their encourager. And it became clear that Oscar was in fact the right person for that job, not because he was what we expected in a pastor, but because he was what God had put together and laid out for someone to do ministry in that position. The work in Belize is important. It is, I don't know if you can extrapolate on the word important. It's necessary, it's important, it's life-giving, it's hope-building in a community that often doesn't have those things. I visited in my position as coordinator in North American and Caribbean Ministries in April, and for the first time I listened to the Belizean national anthem. The kids and the staff sing that before school every day. And the theme of the Belizean national anthem, and I mean this, I'm not running a campaign, is we don't want to be enslaved anymore. And it is a national anthem that is devoid of the hope that we heard about in the workshop earlier today. One of the things that Friends FUM in Belize does is provide an avenue of hope and possibility to a group of people who don't have hope and possibility in the way we know it. And that lack of hope is reflected in the national anthem. There are lines that say, "Let us not become hewers of wood again." The population, what Belize was for as an English colony, was people who chopped down their trees and cut them up and sent them to Europe to have furniture built for people who had more money and more means. And their national anthem is, "Don't let us be those kinds of slaves anymore," rather than let us be this kind of thing with hope and direction and purpose. And it reminds me a little bit of the new association saying, we don't want to be that, but we don't know what we want to be for yet. And it is my hope, part of my vision, part of my hope for FUM in Belize is to establish a process by which people begin to see the blessings of hope laid out before them through what the holistic evangelism, a process of caring for the heart, the body, the mind, and the soul of a group of people in a community on the south side of Belize. I have one piece of note that I haven't looked at yet that I think I want to share. One of the members in Muncie is a clinical psychologist. She has a PhD, and she shared at Stoking the Fire this year, and she closed her workshop with this prayer, and she's titled it The Helper's Prayer. Help me to trust in your presence, God. Help me to remember that your timing is perfect. Help me not to lean on my own understanding. Help me to discern and reside in your purpose. Help me to remember my work is a sacrament. Help me to find courage when I am scared. Help me to find strength when I am exhausted. Help me to find hope when I am in despair. Help me to find compassion when I become callous. Help me to find understanding when I am angry. Help me to find inspiration when my creativity falters. Help me to be humble when I am feeling defensive. Help me to apologize when I have hurt others. Help me to forgive when others have hurt me. Help me to find kindred spirits when I feel alone. Help me to always remember that you love me. Oscar is going to come and share a little bit of the finer details of what goes on the ground in FUM Belize on the south side of Belize City. Oscar?
So I'll be sharing a few slides, and it will be much a highlight of the work that is going on in Belize because of your support, because of your care, because of your generous contributions and prayers. I will start with what is going on at Belize Friends School. So we just had our graduation on 19th of June. We had 10 students graduating, and as we were having our graduation, we had 12 students to start us up for the new year. Enrollment is ongoing. Next slide. And we have hired a new principal, Antoliana Butner. Antoliana is the one on the right side. And in the middle is Patricia Welch, who is the teacher. And on the left is Bernadine Benjamin. Frank has just retired. He has served us well for over more than 4 years. And we are blessed to have Antoliana come on board and move us forward. When we were having an interview, there are a number of things that Antoliana said that resonated with our mission. She said that she succeeded because someone gave her a second chance. If she had not gotten a second chance, she would not have been a teacher, she would not have been a principal. And that resonated with what we are doing in Belize, giving young people a second chance. Antoliana also said that we need to get this school from where it is and put it in the community. We need to get out there and get more students come. And she said she wished that when they were growing up, her brothers would have known that there is a school called Belize Friends School giving boys a second chance. They would have had a different life. And that as well resonated with our mission as friends in this community. Antoliana comes from the same community where our school is currently located. She has a master's in education and leadership. She has a bachelor's in primary education. She has taught in Belize. She has taught in North Carolina, and she had returned to Belize and had been a principal. And on her day of the interview, it was actually her last day of being a principal in the school where she was. And so there was perfect divine timing. And so we are blessed to have Antoliana come on board and help us drive the school forward. 1 in 5 boys of ages 12 to 16 has been exposed to some kind of gang experience. Either they have been recruited before, they have participated in it, they have seen a gun, they have witnessed a shooting, they have a family member who is part of a gang community, they have lost someone as a result of gang violence. 1 in 5 is an experience of a huge magnitude. And so the work that Belize Friends School is doing, being present in that community and saying, you can bring your son to our school, even if he's 12 years old and there's no other school they can go to. Even if they don't know how to read, but they're just willing to know how to read. You can bring them. We will teach them how to read, how to count. We will stay with them until they can be able to read and write, and we will test them with grade 1 studies, grade 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they can be able to go to high school. It's just one of the ways that we can communicate the love and the care of God by giving them an opportunity. And in doing so, we reduce the pool from which gangs recruit from. Next slide. One of the things that Belize Friends Center does is to support the school and connect with the community and be able to see what are resources that are available there in the community that we can have access to be able to support the school, or to be able to work with others to have a greater impact in the community where we serve. And we work with Athena Major. You've seen her in newsletters, and she is a wonderful dynamic leader who knows how to engage with the community. And we've been working with her on a whole lot of things. And this year, actually last month, we received a donation of desktop computers from Cisco Construction Company and Lab Foundation. These computers are going to enable us to set up the infrastructure that we can now use to digitize our education. So if we have learning programs that can help students know how to count in an easier way, or in a way that is fun, know how to read, know how to do different things, we can be able now to put on those computers and find more ways to help students who are struggling do their education better. Next slide. This picture is from a trip that is made by Wilmington College students to Belize. They come and they engage with the school, helping students to study and doing different types of work that is available during the day. And in the evening, we have an outreach. We have kids that come from the community, and we have worship and Bible reading and interaction. And that helps us to conduct outreach. And some of the kids who've come to Sunday school have known that there's a worship happening here because of some events like this. It also creates an opportunity for recruitment. When people come to a place and, oh, there's a school here, what does it do? I know my brother doesn't go to school because he was not able to succeed in the other school. Next slide. And recently we now have a studio, a podcast studio, that we were supported by Lab Foundation and the US Embassy in Belmopan. So it has all the facilities that a studio has. And with this, we can have an added infrastructure for students to learn. And it also makes our work with the community now easier. When we used to do campaign against human trafficking, we depended on field events only. Now we can be able to do work online and then end up with an event. It's a facility that will enable us to engage with the community, to do advertising for the school, to preach. Our pastor Chris has an interest in sharing the gospel. Now we have an infrastructure that he can be able to do that. Next slide. This is another program. It's called Better Brothers Initiative, and it's a program that brings together teenage boys to learn ways to identify causes of violence, forms of violence, and ways to address them. And our Belize Friends School is a participant in that program as well. And it deals with all things about how do you express emotions, how do you deal with grief, what alternatives do you have when you're angry, what can you do when you are being bullied. Same things that young people who come from broken families are not exposed to. And same causal factors, when they pile up, drive them to join a gang when they would have had alternatives in their lives. Next slide. This is another event that we had recently as a result of the work at the center, in partnership with Book Foundation. That we've had access to school supplies and books, and we have kids who come to Sunday school and to the community, and we have educators from the community who came and had time with kids and read with them, and at the end of the event, participants went home with a school bag, with books, with pens, ready to start next year. Simple ways of encouraging education, and at the same time trying to meet the essential needs. Next slide. I want to thank Western Yearly Meeting for giving us the seed support for this project. And I want to tell a little bit about the La Democracia land. La Democracia land was given to FUM in 1990s because of the work that Seti Vernon was doing on the south side of Belize City in partnership with FUM. And the government was giving land in La Democracia area, and they gave 3¼ acres to Seti Vernon. And the people in this village became custodians of that property. And you know, Belize has a land problem, and sometimes you'd have squatters come and set settlements in lands that there's no activity on. Or sometimes politicians, when they get power, they would allocate land that seems not to have an occupant or activity on it. But the people in La Democracia village have been custodians of this land. When they see someone on it, they will say, this land belongs to friends. And you'd receive a phone call. Somebody was working on your property. Did you send them? Who was that person? And so we've had this special relationship with this village for years. And a couple of years ago, Friends United meeting began thinking about sustainability. How can we have different ways of growing into sustainability? And after working on research and discernment, we found out that plantain project will be a good project for that space. It will give us plantains that we can sell to the fresh market, to the supermarkets in Belize City. And in doing that, we can begin to generate some income to support our work in the long run. And we can have an opportunity for an additional activity with our young people. So we find a great blessing that finally we will be able to do something with this land that the villagers in La Democracia have cared for, saying this is the property of friends. It would be a blessing for them to see something happening on it. When I visited the property with Kelly, there was a lady from that village called Mrs. Irma, and she was so excited about the possibility of friends wanting to do something there. At the time, we had not even decided whether it will be a plantain project or not. But the first question she asked Kelly was, if you are going to do something with this property, am I going to get a job? Does it mean I'll come back home and work from home? And Miss Irma has been very helpful in being our presence on whatever thing we've done on that property, whether it's just clearing it as a requirement to say this is not an abandoned property, we own it. She's been very helpful in being the lead person helping us with that project. We have a lot of hope in this work, and the same faith that we have moved and worked with everything that we've done in Belize, from church to school, the same faith and hope we bring to this plantain project. Next slide. This is Belize Friends Church. The man in a red t-shirt is our Pastor Chris, and this is a baby dedication service. And if you look on the picture on the left, the man at the door in the pink t-shirt is also Pastor Chris. When we started our worship group in Belize, we were about 8 people. One Belizean family, a Kenyan and North American friends, Dale Graves, Mike and Kay Kane, Judy Lamb. And we met in this big hall, 8 people sitting in a circle. And for a very long time, we sent out invitations and no one came. But we continued meeting. And then one day, a boy from the school showed up and had attended the service with us and invited another one and invited another one and invited another one. Then we became a church mainly for men and boys. And we stayed like that for a very long time. And then one day, a girl showed up. And she went up and invited another one and invited another one. Now we have more girls and boys than men. More girls and women than men and boys. But it is the work of faith, and we thank you so much that you continued to support us to stay in the field for that long and wait until we saw what God was doing. Sometimes I look at this as the story of Elijah calling back the rain after 3 years of drought. And he's kneeling and he's praying and he's sending someone to say, go and look in the sky if there is something, and the messenger comes and says, I see nothing, and go back, and I see nothing, and go back, and I see nothing, and go back, and I see nothing. And then the messenger comes and says, I see a small cloud as small as a man's hand. And Elijah says, rain is coming. So to me, this is like that experience. And we are trusting that God will continue to walk ahead of us, as Michael has said. God has always been one step ahead of us, and he will continue doing that. We are grateful again for the team that is coming in December from Western Yearly Meeting. We are hopeful and looking forward to build local leadership. Build a team around Pastor Chris. We have, Miriam is meeting with about 3 to 4 women every month for prayers. We are hoping that that will grow into a women's ministry. We are hoping that those women will team up with Pastor Chris and the younger boys and girls who are stepping up and helping in the church, and they'll build this wonderful local leadership of Belizean Friends. And we will be there to support them. And they'll grow this congregation and help us to plant another one, and help us to plant another one, and help us to plant another one. So we are looking forward to your coming to Belize. We welcome you all. Continue standing with us, continue sending us your prayers. we still need your support so that we can continue doing this work until it all rains.
Thank you, Oscar. I hope you captured just a glimpse of some of the exciting things that are happening. This is what I'm saying about Belize. For many years, we were kind of a mom and pop operation. We were kind of an operation that we could operate out of the back of the trunk of our car. And it's grown up now. And we are working towards to put new systems in place, financial accountability in place, new leadership initiatives in place, just so that we can steward this ministry well. We're in the midst of some growing pains. And part of that growing pains is that our current needs are outpacing the budget that we established. And so your ongoing support for Belize Friends Ministry is huge. So thank you for that. And so tonight's offering for Belize Ministry is a huge gift, and I invite you to continue to support that really good work. The other thing is that Oscar and Miriam have just started their term, and they're not fully funded. They're around a little over 50% funded. I think 54% funded. We encourage friends to help support them. If you had been supporting Nikki, who has now moved on, I encourage you to support Oscar and Miriam. If you haven't offered a recurring monthly contribution to a field staff member, I encourage you to do that, because that is an encouragement to them that you're part of their team, and that because the work there can be lonely and it can be really hard. So I invite you to do that. When we were downstairs, I don't think our plant is here. Someone says, would you be available to arrange estate gifts to benefit Belize Friends Ministry? And I said, yes, absolutely. I would be very happy to be in conversation with anyone who may want to explore different ways in which they can contribute towards the ministries that they're interested in life, including what might be happening in Belize. So again, thank you for your generosity.
The offering tonight for the Belize was $876.18.
Thank you, friends. One of the things I remember from Western Yearly Meeting when I was a child was Sadie Vernon coming. She first came, and whenever she came, she would stay with my great aunt and uncle in Carmel. And I didn't really know who she was. I didn't know where Belize was or anything like that, but she was just this saintly person that I remember looking up to as a child. And then after my mom retired, she spent a number of pieces of years at the Belize Friends School. So it's a place that is near and dear to my heart, and it's so exciting to hear what you're sharing with us, Oscar, about the ways that God is working in your ministry there. Thank you for coming and sharing with us. Let's close our service this evening by standing and singing hymn 508. There's a joy in serving Jesus.
Will you join me in prayer? God, we are grateful for the signs of life, as Kelly talked to us about earlier today. We are especially grateful for the work of your power, your grace, your love, and wisdom in timing, both in the lives of Michael Sherman and his family, and also Oscar and Miriam and Noah, their family, in the lives of the people who are being touched by the school in Belize and the church and the center, and ways that they are providing hope where there is no hope. Sometimes it seems like there is an ocean of darkness and death, but you have given us an infinite ocean of light and love. May we be open in our eyes and our ears and our hearts to follow that light. Amen.
I just wanted to remind people that we have flyers about the FUM Belize Sustainability project. That is our special project this year. If they want to take flyers home. I don't know whether you heard that or not. There are flyers about the FUM Belize project that are on the corner of the table back there. So please take those.